Buongiorno, everyone. I bet you people were thinking that we're not going to do this episode. People were going to think that I died at closing ceremonies. How's it going? Oh, yes. Same to you, Kirsten. She just said it the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. That's a good comment, Jay Frank. I'm so glad that we actually did it today. We have so much to catch up on, y'all. We have so much to catch up on. Well, first of all, keep in mind, so I was scanning through it and it made me so sad because I was going through RAI, which is the main Italian station here. And I put it on channel 2 and the Olympics is gone. The Olympics is gone. They're not showing coverage of the Olympics anymore. So I put REI Sport in the background, but I am glad that we did it today. I have a wild story for y'all, which I understand I am somehow full of wild stories, but Robert, J. Frank, Kirsten, I especially have a wild story for you three. So what's going on, Jean-Francois? Comment ça va? You're actually somewhat involved in it as well. So I go to bobsledding yesterday, which keep in mind, my plan was, okay, so to go to these last two sports, basically what I have to do is I have to, right after we did the live stream on Saturday, I got a car, drove 5 hours basically to this small town just outside of Cortina, because you can't enter Cortina during the actual games because it's too busy. And I had to stay there overnight because bobsled started at 10 in the morning. And so I couldn't drive that far. So I go and I drive 5 hours, find my way to the hotel, and which it's a hotel, but it's really like a five room like Grandma Nona's house. So I go to sleep, I find it okay, go to sleep, wake up, and go to bobsled at 10 a.m. in the morning, make it all the way up the hill just in time to see Jamaica go, which was interesting. By the way, this is none of the story. See Jamaica go, hang out there, watch bobsled, go back down the hill, and grab my car. The plan then is to drive, basically what it says is 2 hours and 41 minutes, but there was a gridlock traffic jam on the way. So I spent an hour and a half in one spot on the highway. I did see Jamaica. Okay, what's really wild is there are tons of Jamaicans there, and like they're like celebrities, which I thought was so cool. So like Jamaicans would be walking around and everyone would like cheer whenever they came around. So yeah, I did see Jamaica. They came in 21st, so they weren't in the fourth heat. It was men's third heat and fourth heat, and only the top 20 basically go into the last heat. But that was really, really wild to see Jamaica. So I'm on my way back to Verona, which is basically a 3 hour, it says it's 2 hours and 41 minutes, but I was on the highway in one spot for about an hour and a half. So it's a buzzer beater to make it to closing ceremonies. So I'm going, I kid you not, I hit 160 kilometers at one point on the Autobahn. I'm like, move it or lose it. I have to go to closing ceremonies. So I show up and I go to park. And for some reason, I go over to an area and I notice that the parking lot's like pretty empty. You have to do these what are called park and rides. You can't just park right near the stadium. So by the way, I did not do this. Okay, I just want to make that clear. I did not do this. I promise you, I did not do this. Okay, so this gentleman. I had nothing to do with this. So this gentleman is, he's flagging me down. I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to go into the parking lot. And he's like, okay, here's the parking lot. I said, excuse me, is this, and I gave him the parking lot for where I was supposed to park. And he goes, no, you're in here. And he said, the athletes are in here. And I'm like, what? And I was kind of confused. So he pushes me, waves me to go through. I was like, well, sir, I'm not an athlete for the Olympics. And he's like, yeah. Okay. And then he just waves me through. So I go to the parking lot and then you get on a bus shuttle. So I get on a bus shuttle and I notice as I'm starting to get on the bus shuttle, that there are some people that look like they are athletes, they're Olympic athletes, like they're in all their gear, like it's the Swiss team. And so I go up to the guy with the at the bus and I'm like, "Sir, I'm not an athlete." He goes, "Yeah. Okay, get on the bus." And he was like, "Where's your credentials?" I was like, "What credentials?" And he was like, "Okay, we'll just find your badge whenever we get there. It's too late for time. Get on the bus." So I get on the bus and it's the Swiss team. Okay. It's the actual Swiss team, like this Olympic Swiss team. And I'm really confused. So I just kind of keep my head down and I kind of look down. And at one point, one of them talks to me and I was like, is this for athletes? And they're like, well, yeah. And I was like, well, I'm not an athlete. They're like, okay. And I'm like, okay. So I get there and then I get out at the what looks like it says athletes arrival. And we are escorted by police officers, keep in mind. And then I walk to the front, and then there's just audience members everywhere, gated back, applauding for us. I'm just getting heated up with this story, by the way, applauding for us. And then there's like, oh, I don't know, 50 people who are Olympics employees waiting for us. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kirsten. And so they're like over this way to the left. And I videotaped and took photographs of some of this because I'm like, no one's going to believe me. So I go through and I'm trying to explain to several Italian employees, I am not in the Winter Olympics. And no one seemed, no matter how hard I tried, apparently my Italian is not that great because no one would believe me. So they're like, over here to the left, ma'am. And they're like, after you. And I'm like, I'm not an athlete though. I'm just like, and one person asked me, they're like, who are you? And I'm like, literally nobody. I'm literally nobody in this equation. Okay. I have a ticket. And they're like, okay. And then they keep escorting me. So then I go by Team USA and I go by Team Ukraine and the Netherlands. And then all of a sudden there's a split and they're like flag bearers over here to the left. And I'm like, I don't have a flag. And they're like, that's okay. Then you're in this group. And I'm like, I'm not in that group either, though. I am not walking in this parade. And so it's like right up near the stadium. And so I took pictures of it. There's like all the athletes ready to march into the stadium. And so I literally find my way out of a picket fence. I like jump out from a picket fence and run around the stadium, and they have to stop broadcasting because I almost ran straight in front of a camera at live broadcasting. Like they had already started, there was cameras zooming in. So I sprint past it, finally get up to my seat about 30 seconds before the thing starts. I took video of all of this. And then after the thing ends, I'm like, okay, I need to basically end. I need to end up at athlete parking. So I go back out the way that I came in, and I try to explain to several of them. I'm like, I just need to get on the athlete parking bus, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's right over here. And I was like, but to be clear, I'm not an athlete. My car is there, and they're like, okay. And I think they thought I was being falsely humble, and I'm like, what is up with the false humility? I'm not falsely humble. I'm not humble at all. I'm an Olympian. I'm an actual Olympian. So like, I'm going to show y'all. And then I promise we're going to get into content, but I have to tell somebody because I'm like, okay, like here's me and the Swiss team on the bus. See them? That's actual members from the Swiss team. And then I get on the bus and I'm like, okay. And the only reason I decided to get on the bus was because it was Team France. So here's a member from Team France just eating. And then here's the Canadian team getting on the bus. And then here's the Ukrainian team getting on the bus. But I don't want them to know that I'm taking pictures. So I aim it down. You can see the feet of the Netherlands start getting on the bus. And so I am just sitting in this bus. And then I made a video so that all of y'all would believe. Here's some more of the Canadians. So I made a video so y'all would believe me, where I'm just sitting there chewing my gum in the same hoodie I'm in now on a bus with all of the Olympians. I could not, no matter what I said, convince the Italians that I was not in the Olympics. So finally, I'm like, screw it. I'm an Olympian. I'm like, this is so deranged. This is so deranged. And so I'm on the bus with all of them, and someone looks at me and they're like, so who are you with? I was like, well, that's kind of a philosophical question. I was like, I live in France. And one of them goes, Allez. I was like, I live in France, but I'm from the US. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be here. And what do you, they're like, what do you mean? They're like metaphorically. And I'm like, no, I'm physically not supposed to be here. I keep telling them that I'm not an athlete. You can see I'm not an athlete, correct? Like, I'm not supposed to be here. They're like, well, what are you here for the Olympics for? I said, well, technically I'm like the spectator. I'm just a spectator. And they're like, well, what do you mean by technically? And I'm like, well, I don't usually, watch winter sports. I kind of just found out what slalom was. They're like, well, what are you here for? And I was like, well, I run a sales media company and I'm here to link your Olympic topics to sales topics, like cold email, cold call. I was like, is anyone in slalom? One of the guys raised his hands. I was like, how to get around a gatekeeper. I was like, now that I'm saying it out loud, it seems like not that great of an idea. You all did great. And he actually started laughing. He was like, that's actually pretty good. I was like, so I'm just here I was like, thanks. It's like, I didn't come up with it. I'm here to link y'all to sales topics for the Winter Cold Outreach Olympics. We're basically both experts in our fields. And I was like, anywho, well, it's nice meeting everyone. Is this the stop that we get off? And that was my Winter Olympics closing ceremonies experience. I was an Olympian. I was an Olympian. That's my story. I have pictures to prove it. I met Team Ukraine. I met the French team, of course, mais oui. Hung out with the French team, the Netherlands team, and then they escorted us back to parking lot along with the cops. So yeah, I might have interrupted a couple of broadcasts. Who knows? Maybe I'm on like NBC or CBS. I don't even know the networks. I'm so confused about what happened last night. Anywho, why don't we jump into the topics? That's my story. I just wanted everyone to know. That very long story. Okay, let's jump into the topics for today. How to make the jump from SDR to AE. This is closing ceremonies. I hope it's not as weird as mine. How to make the jump from SDR to AE. If you're an SDR and you want to make the jump to an AE, meaning a role that you aren't currently in, to be clear, SDR to AE. I'm so excited for today. Thank you all for coming. I'm a little bit sad today, though, I got to admit. Whenever I heard the music, I'm like, this is the last day. If you want to make the jump from SDR to AE, the number one thing that I would do is, y'all are going to laugh, learn your buyer more than the AEs already do. So it's actually a very easy transition, or it's a simple transition once you do that. But everything that an AE, their skill set should be centered around knowing the buyer. So the thing that you can do to make the fastest transition there is to know the buyer even better than the AE does. I have promoted several different SDRs from SDR to solution architects and to basically solutions engineering, and from SDR to account executives. And my goal usually was, that the SDR outruns the current AEs whenever they're in the AEs that are already pre-existing, and they managed to do it. Almost every single one of them was outrunning the top performing AEs once they got into the role. And the one thing that I was pushing them towards was knowing the buyer better than the AEs already did. So I would just study the buyer. That is the one thing that you're going to need. Yes, you're going to need to know product information, but it's much less important that you know product information, that you know the buyer's world. The other thing that I would study is the ecosystem. So the more facts that you know about the buyer, the more facts that you know about the ecosystem, and hypothetically what they would use your products to do, then the more you're going to bridge that gap. And usually it's going to be, generally speaking, very obvious. Closing comes down to opening, and opening comes down to asking questions, and asking the right questions comes down to, how much do I know about the buyer? How do I know which questions to ask because I know about the buyer statistics and metrics? That's how I'd make the jump. Something I'd avoid, and then we're going to go into the next lap because my intro was so long. Something I'd avoid, I wouldn't necessarily take advice from account executives, number one. And I also, usually in my experience, the ones that are willing to dole it out are the ones that usually aren't top of the leaderboard. If there is someone top of the leaderboard, I would try to spend time with them. But you don't, just because they're great doesn't mean that they know exactly why. So I keep that in mind, that's just kind of a side item, but it's not the main forte of what you need to be focused on. Another thing that I wouldn't worry so much about is trying to chummy up with the marketing team, or trying to chummy up with sales leadership, or As an SDR leader previously, I'm not worried about you being friends with salespeople. I'm worried about you hitting quota. So the number one thing that you can do, apart from learning about the buyer, is bash your quota, meaning in a good way. So you 2x, 3x your quota, then all of a sudden I'm indebted to you somewhat as the leader. I want you to be able to move on and be successful, and people want to keep you in the organization. So I would definitely think about it's much less about how do I figure out how to have a negotiation conversation, or how do I hang out with the AEs. It's more so, how do I make my current boss happy? And then how do I know about the buyer when and if I step into the role? So by the time you step into the role, I would definitely say that you need to know a good amount about the buyer, at least, 10, 15 statistics per buyer persona that you sell into, if you want to be successful right off the bat. If you know that, there's nothing that can stop you from being successful. Another thing that you can do is go and hang out at networking events. However, I wouldn't go hang out with AEs at networking events. I would go hang out at networking events for my buyer, and I would keep that outside of work time. Again, the most crucial thing to you moving on is not necessarily about the next limb. It's about your current limb. So a lot of people that I have seen and managed in the past, they had this reach out, this grasp, for the AE role. I'm like, yeah, well, bro, you're not past my quota. So number one, I'm not indebted to you, but number two, we got to talk about your current role. Are you successful in this current role? Is going to be a main predictor on whether I can recommend you, and whether you have leverage to move on to the next role. So I'd keep that in your mind. Another thing to keep in your mind is time and seat doesn't matter to a leader. Effectiveness and seat is what matters to a leader. So I had several AE or SDRs. It was heartbreaking that they would find justification of well, I've been an SDR for 2 years. And I'm like, well, first of all, not for me, but second of all, it doesn't matter to me if you've been a B- player or a C+ player that I've had to coach the entire time for 4 years. All that means is that I've had the tax of having to, manage you to quote it from a completely kernel perspective. So time and seat does not matter to an SDR leader. It's how effective were you in that seat. And we truly measure it of okay, I had a SDR, for instance, he came into SDR. This is when I was working for a conversation intelligence platform. And right off the bat, he 5x his quota. And I'm like, see, him, I'm going to owe something to within several months. So by month 4, I had promoted him to basically be a team lead that reported into me, that helped me out with the SDR team. He's still a sales leader at that company today. So anywho, if you're trying to make that jump, the biggest mistake I'd avoid is thinking that time and seat owes you that means you're owed something, and doing activities that you think are good on paper, like becoming good friends with the AEs, blah, blah, but not actually being effective in the role. But the thing I'd be doing in the background and outside of work hours is getting to know your buyer. That will actually help with your current role as well. So I would just think about that. Okay, then lap 2. I'm an Olympian. You hear that authority in my voice now that I'm Olympian? Thank you for saying that, by the way, Kirsten. I did see that. I didn't bring up the comment because it was embarrassing. Thank you for saying that about being athletic. It was really funny explaining to them what I'm doing there. I was like, I'm really sorry. You know, I gave him several examples. I was like, I did a video at bobsled on how to slay your quota, for instance. Their face. They did really like it though. They're like, that's actually really good. Like, well, if you didn't meddle anyone looking to come into sales, here's my I did not plug my series. I did not identify myself because I'm like, I don't want to identify myself right now. It's gonna be like local American girl runs in front of screen broadcasts. They're like, Senora, Senora. I was like, look, not Jacques, Luigi. I have to get him to my seat. Anywho, I have receipts to prove all of it. So, my mom, I'm going to let her know afterwards that I'm an Olympian. Okay. SMBAE to enterprise top performer. This one's a little trickier. The thing that needs to pivot, well, no matter what the type of role, the value doesn't change for someone. Value doesn't change if I'm, a parent, or I'm looking to buy. People are just trying to solve problems. They're just trying to solve problems. Like I was finding good being on the bus with people, but at the point that I saw the flags, that's when the pain became a problem that I have to do something about. That I'm like, I'm going to end up walking out on the field in front of global television in this hoodie. That's when it became something I have to actually do something about. So SMBAE usually is more, I don't want to say transactional because I don't think that that's what sales is about at all. The complexity that comes in with enterprise, in my opinion, is not, enterprise AEs would tell you that it's a lot. I started as an enterprise AE, oddly enough. In terms of the complexity of the sale, and then in nomenclature as well, pretty shortly thereafter. But my minimum floor was $2 million, and it was up to $20 million. So it was a minimum 6-month sales cycle. What enterprise sales takes is, I think, two main things. Number one, you need to realize that it's a long game, a really, really long, it's a long game in that you're not going to get a signature right off the bat. And even if you did, it wouldn't be to your benefit. Well, I take that back. There's a third thing. So a view of that it is a long game is the number one thing that's important. The second thing that's really important is the realization that you're going to have multiple buyers. Some of them are on the committee already. Some of them will come into the committee mid-deal. And I don't think that it's necessarily smart to be suggestive around who should be in the committee, but I do think that it's important that no matter who is in the committee or who does come up within conversations or is going to be added to new meetings, that you view each one of them the same, meaning you haven't added value until you find an unknown. So when you go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, which is very interesting, I sell mostly enterprise within Flip the Script. Like that's just for some reason how my business works. I think it's because there's so much content from an educational perspective on the website that it's enterprise team friendly. So I think that's why, I like my book leans that direction. And oftentimes in enterprise, I end up with someone at the end that is a completely different person that I did in the start. And it's at their suggestion. But how I do that is not by identifying key decision makers necessarily. It's, I try to find as many unknowns as I can for this first person. And then they push me in front of the second person. And it's a digital property in terms of if you don't know very much and they didn't get value, they're going to keep you from everyone. They're going to do everything they can to keep you from everyone because it's going to be at their request. Meaning, if you were to meet someone or multi-thread, let's say, heaven forbid, around someone, then it would be, then they would have to pay the tax of that. Their name would be on the fact that if your meeting went badly. But if your meeting goes well with them, they're going to do the direct opposite, meaning they're going to like advocate for you to get in front of these other decision makers because that looks like their decision too. So the important thing within enterprise of how you view it is not only the long-term game, but the most important piece is that every single buyer that you come in front of, you don't take the mindset of like, well, I've added value to Mario. So when I meet Luigi, I'm like, well, Luigi's the second person. And it's very natural for a human being to think, I've added to Mario. So I've added to Mario Brothers, Mario Kart, for instance, Inc., so to speak. But it's like Luigi doesn't care about what you've done for Mario. Luigi cares about what you've done for him. Right. So when I meet someone new, I don't take in the perspective of I know where I'm at, and that where you're at, unfortunately, is ground zero. And how you do with Luigi, sorry, will push you over to, well, now we're just going to go full Mario Kart of like, if you do well with Luigi and you find 2 or 3 more, then he's going to push you in front of Bowser and, the princess and so on and so forth. But I view every single buyer persona as a completely fresh experience that I haven't added value unless I found unknowns for them in specific. So the thing that I think that you need the most in terms of if you're going to go from SMB AE to enterprise AE is a Rolodex of, I don't only know one buyer, I know metrics for all buyers. All buyers. My biggest piece of advice is you cannot go around or circumvent the current person no matter what. I saw a session where someone told me, or where someone on the line, and it's a sales trainer, and they're like how I clear my throat. I always get nervous. They were saying their biggest learning was that basically they went around their current buyer and they went to their boss and they were like telling them about all the problems because they couldn't get traction with the first buyer, and that the boss basically eventually was like, you're never going to step foot in this organization ever again. And the sales trainer was like, so that was a really important lesson. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like saying I killed someone and I had to go to do some jail time, and that was a really important lesson that I should never do that again. You should already know that. You should already know that you shouldn't go around someone, and you should ethically already know that you shouldn't root out your buyer. So another key piece to enterprise is keeping your buyers separate. What I mean by that is a lot of their problems are with each other. And if they can't trust you, that when they're talking to you, they're talking to just you, and that you're going to help them solve problems, even if it's according with the sales leader, let's say, they need to feel like, they need to know, and it needs to objectively be true that you're on their side. That's what needs to happen for them to really lean in and trust. You have to have that with as many buyers as possible, an off-record relationship. Right. And how that's gained is by, number one, credibility of like, you can actually diagnose unknowns. But then number two, it should be a symptom of what the truth is. The truth is they can trust you. And so the symptom is they feel that. I wouldn't go after them feeling that. But point blank, I would not multi-thread around a current buyer, no matter what the cost, no matter what the situation is, because you will burn trust. I'd say 98% likelihood with the entire organization, but certainly 100% with that person. Even if it works, they're going to feel completely out and they're going to be rooting against you. So SMB AE to enterprise AE, you just need to know both of those things. And I would study all of the buyers as opposed to just having one. Okay, next pizza pie slice. Men, s'il vous plaît, s'il vous plaît. Sorry, I'm still laughing about the fact that I spent 18 minutes telling y'all that story. I'm really sorry. I had to tell someone. And then I drove back from Milan, or to Milan, and I got here at 2:30 in the morning, and so my mom's like, I was like, Mimi, I'm back. I have to tell her that, so that she's okay. And I was in a group chat with my mom and dad. And I said, I'm back. She said, how's closing ceremonies? And I said, it's a long story. And she goes, you need to go to bed. I can tell. She's like, she tells me, she goes, Ampy, go night night. That's her phrase to me to make me go to bed. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. I'm going to bed. And I was like, but there's something for the record that happened last night tonight that I need to tell you about. Specifically that I won the gold medal. Okay, how to make the jump from AE to leader. Here's a mistake that I see made. Assuming that your top performer should be a leader. Some top performers are just that. They're just top performers. They're not cut out for leadership, and the fact that they don't want to be, and that's not a bad thing. Here's the thing: some people would villainize that, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, you're not focused on other people." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're focused on something very important, which is hitting their number." Right? So not everyone wants to be one. And number one, and number two, not everyone should be one. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Whenever I went into leadership, my CRO basically brought me in the room and he's like, I want you to build a global SDR team. And I justified to him, like I had been in sales and then I moved out to enterprise sales and then I moved out to the Bay Area and I was going into, and I knew that I didn't I thought if I could get really good at prospecting, then I would be on fire as an AE because that was my weakest spot. I was top of the leaderboard. I was the annoying AE that was always past quota, but I knew that prospecting was my worst spot. And I also knew I didn't know the ecosystem of tech. So I took a step back. Even though I was 30 years old and had been an account executive for 7 years, enterprise account executive, to be an SDR at 30. And so when he was like, I want you to build out a global SDR team, I'll never forget the conversation with him. I was like, I don't think so. And he was like, why not? I was like, can I be candid? I'm your in the box, typical top performer, ego top performer that you just leave alone. Meaning I'm too selfish to be a leader. I don't like thinking about other people. I don't like worrying about other people. And I tried to convince him just like the Italians, I tried to convince him for, I kid you not, 30 minutes of how I innately, that I was self-focused on it in terms of my goal. I was like, I don't naturally think about, oh, I wonder how X is doing with blank. Like, that's just not in my DNA. And he said, yeah, he goes, I agree with you. I'm like, ouch. He's like, I agree with you, but I've seen something multiple times. And I'm like, what is it? I would go into calls with account executives that I would set the meetings, and I'd go into calls with them, and it was stressing me out how they were taking the calls because they're ruining them. They're ruining them. They're blah, 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 blah product. So at one point during the call, I would hit the mute on the phone and I'd be like, ask this question. And then I would just unmute it. And for whatever reason, the AE in the moment asked the question. And then I started doing calls like that. I'm like, now ask this question. And then I unmuted it. And he was like, so I've seen you do that multiple times from the outside of the office. It was clear windows straight through in that office. And he said, and it's working. And all of a sudden, their numbers are going up. So whether you're selfish or not, that's a completely different topic for a completely different time. But I do think that you like coaching. And I didn't see that in myself beforehand. I think that it takes one or the other of you either you naturally think about other people, or you do like seeing people progress. And I think that I have conviction around that of like, this is what I think that you're doing wrong. But in either case scenario, I think it's extremely important. I differ from a lot of people in this regard. I think it's extremely important. Your skill level is high, meaning there's a lot of people who are selfless, but they don't know how to hit quota, right? And so they focus on other people and they coach, but they don't know what to coach on. You can get around and you can learn a la me. From a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to look at a speaker I scale of 1 to 10 am like a 1 in terms of my speaking ability. I have a lot of filler words. I always have something in my hand whenever I'm talking. I walk back and forth, but my focus on my love for the content helps me get over it. And the speaking ability is less important because of that intense draw to the subject matter. I think that it's extremely important that if you're going to be a leader, that you are excellent at whatever that craft is. I would not have made it out of my first 6 months or certainly year and built all the teams that I did if not for that core skill. So I don't think that people should just be a leader because they like to coach or because they focus on other people. I think that it's extremely, extremely important that you know what to say and what to coach them on. You instinctively know what to say and what to coach them on. I also think it's extremely important that if you're going to be a leader, that you have to learn all the time. People can diss me about a lot of things, my diet, the fact that I only basically drink no water. I haven't stretched. I run 20 miles a day and don't stretch. If I try to touch my toes, I'm like a foot from the ground. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. I'm probably going to die at 45. However, you cannot, the one thing you can't take away from me is I learn naturally and a lot. I love to learn. I read all the time. I'm constantly in psych theory. In my head, that is the main portion of my job, is to learn. And if you're going to become a leader, I don't care where your skill level is at. It is your job to learn, and it is your job to be better than every single rep on your team. If you don't have that, and I'm just going to say the one thing that everyone is probably thinking as a seller, but no one is would ever dare to say, if you don't have that, if you're not better than them, they'll never respect you. Ever, because they shouldn't. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Thank you very, very much. Well, I love learning. I really do. I love learning. And I think it takes an intentional focus on that. It should be a natural built-in habit. So people tended to get over my shortcomings as a leader, or I never had any churn. I'll just say it like that. I never had any churn, and I'm very well aware of, to some degree, of my shortcomings as a leader. So I think if I had to guess why, and it's really meaningful to me, Mark McWaters over at Ambition brought it up, which I thought it was really impactful when I took a look back. He said, your SDRs and AEs are still liking it on your content. And he was like, that's really meaningful. I'm like, it is really meaningful for me, because it means that at that given point in time, and I knew my shortcomings as a leader, meaning I struggle with being like, how's your day? Or, how was your weekend? Or blah, blah, blah. I usually don't want to talk about something for 20 minutes in the intro, but they got over it because of, that focus on the craft. So I think it's extremely important, if you're going to make the jump to a leader, that you are consistently good at learning, and that you know the skill, you know what to coach them on. If you don't know what to coach them on, you can have a desire to coach people all day long, but you instinctively won't know. So I would just say, especially if you're going to be promoted internally to a leadership gig, which I think is the hardest but the most effective way to do it, that you should know your craft inside and out. And that display and evidence should be so obvious that it's, very natural for you to become a leader. So that's the thing that I would keep in mind, that if you're going to make that jump, then those two things have to be there. You don't necessarily have to be a soft, always focus on other people person. I'm a good example of that, but you do have to have skill. Otherwise, you'll see your team not respect you and not want to follow you because they don't think you know where you're going. Ooh, yeah. Buzzer beater. It's like the closing ceremonies. I made it last night. 30 seconds left. Still reeling from that. I was like, I have to take photos, otherwise no one's gonna believe me. Okay, let's go into things that your manager will never tell you that matter. This is gonna be a really quick lap, and then we're gonna do the things that your manager will tell you that matter. Hitting quota. Okay. Hitting quota, number one, the thing that matters to your manager more than anything else is hitting quota. They don't care necessarily if you help them with sales enablement. They don't care necessarily that you help them at the water cooler. Like it depends. It's helpful. But the thing that helps the most are the reps that hit quota. So I would think about, like instead of helping with this sales enablement course and, oh, this person just onboarded, so I want to help them out, or I want to take this person to lunch, or I want to make sure me and my AE are good and I want to spend time with them, or I want to spend time with marketing and I want to go to, there are a certain amount of reps who would do that naturally on my team. And I was always kind of salty about it, of like, meaning I'm like, that's great, but I need you to do the thing that I hired you for. I don't care if your dreams and desires are to become a CSM, unless you make it my priority by hitting your quota. Then I'm like, they did right by us and by the team, so I need to do right by them to get them over to that role. Naturally, did I want good things for them? Yes. But if you don't take care of your quota in the meantime, it, like your manager, I'm telling you this because it's one thing that managers want to say, of like, people want to take time off, which I understand. People want to take time off. Granted, people have lives. However, if you haven't hit your quota, do I love you taking time off? No, I don't. As a leader, I don't. Why? Because you haven't done what I hired you to do. So it's like, if you have hit your quota and you're 2x past it, I don't care if you hit it on date January 2nd. I'm like, go to Cabo, Brendan. Go to Cabo for the rest of the year. Why? Because you hit your quota. So the number one thing that you need to prioritize is the number one thing that your manager prioritizes, which is their number, a la diagnostic selling. What I care about is my number. So if you help me do that now, I mean, even if you wanted to help with like onboarding and stuff, I'm like, don't talk to them, because I mean, if you're not top of the leaderboard, then I'm like, what are they training them to do? I worried about that. And usually if someone isn't necessarily excelling in terms of their number, that's when they really start to lean in on these topics. And so it's really tricky for me as a leader, because I'm like, I don't want to tell you not to do this stuff. And you're all talking about next steps, but I'm talking about my current step, your current step, which is, are you hitting your number? So I think it's the most important thing. And I think it's the most, you have to keep in mind, ethical thing. Your manager is hired to hit that number. So, and you were hired to contribute to hitting that number. So I see people on LinkedIn building personal brands and blah, blah, blah. And every single time, without exception, when you go to their org internally and you ask them about their number, they're like, they're either not there. I even talked to several sales leaders that they were like, talking about, they randomly shared this with me, and they're like, this person, even though they have a big brand on LinkedIn, they're like, it's this person, let's call it Brendan. They're like, Brendan was at 10% of his number. And it's like, he couldn't see it. He thought that he was owed the world because he had a personal brand. And that's why I really get anxious about personal brand, because it draws focus. And typically it draws focus from not a top performer. You can't take their attention off of their number. You can't. They're trained like that, of like, I do revenue generating activities. If you make me come to this conference marketing, okay, fine, I'll do it. But I don't like it. Why? Because I like revenue generating activities. So typically the people that are focused on personal brand, they're like sitting there ripping comments and blah, blah. And then it becomes a big social issue of, like, well, should I let them post? And it's like, well, I don't mind if you post. I don't mind if you have a side hustle, I guess. But what I'm worried about is that your current hustle, main hustle, you're half of quota. And you're sitting here talking about paid posts. And I'm not supposed to get mad about that as a leader. Why? Because then you can blast me on LinkedIn. It's a headache. It's a headache. I wouldn't hire it. That I'm like, if I'm being completely open about it, that I'm like, I want someone who is focused on their number. Why? Because I'm a leader and paid to hit my number, right? So it becomes this big head issue of like, because if I tell them not to post, and that I completely understand, the influencers would be like, they told me not to post. I'm like, I bet they didn't say that. It's 2026. I bet they didn't say that. What they were feeling and what they meant, even if they did, was likely, do your job first, then this thing. Unless you want to make this thing your entire job, then it's like, do that, but don't use me as a paid trial to do that. Right. So the number one thing that your manager cares about, if your SDR or AE, is your quota. So unless that's your number one thing that you're focused on, before, people say you can do both. And I'm like, yeah, but you need to eat what's on your plate first. And you need to show your manager that you can do that consistently over time, like 4 months back to back to back to back to back. But then I don't care. I don't care what you do. Right. So I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up. It's the number one thing that I see people lose focus of in the process. And it's the number one thing that again, they have like heartache that they're like, no, I don't want to tell you not to go on vacation. And then you're like, oh, well, I need to prioritize myself. And it's like, yeah, but you didn't prioritize your job the entire year. Why? Because I saw you leaving at 3:00 in the afternoon. Or like, you have doctor's appointments in the middle of the day, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just being completely candid because I, was a leader. And I'm just thinking of all of these things are drawing focus away from the number. Why? Because I was focused on my number. Why? Because that's my job. That is my job. So the people who make headway organizations are the people who don't lose focus of that. So I wouldn't let anything take away from that first. And then you can think about all this other stuff, yeah. Okay, next lap. I've said enough. Totally. Robert, everyone's sitting here ripping webinars. And I'm like, okay, you're 21, 22. You're like, yeah, well, I was successful. I'm like, for 1 quarter, that does not a career long make. And you'll find that out in about 3 years. But I'm like, people, even if they do take your advice, they shouldn't. Why? Because you've hit quota once. Like, when I learned the most about my craft was my 20s. Thank God social media did not really exist. Like, Facebook existed. Facebook came out when I was a freshman in college. LinkedIn was not big when I was in my 20s. As I turned 30 is when I started to really get online. Of like, know that LinkedIn was a thing, and it was to get a job. It was to get a job, and I'm so thankful for that, because what people see is they're like, oh, well, you have a lot of content. I'm like, but what people don't see is for a decade I got my teeth bashed in. That's how I learned those things. So by the time that I came to market, someone had asked me, like, how do you people want to know how you did what you did sometimes. And I'm like, you can't do that unless you learn the lesson. Everyone on this line knows that. So I'm like preaching to the choir, but like, when you learn the lessons, and the point of learning the lessons is not so you can share them online, meaning if they're real lessons. It took a decade of getting my teeth bashed in over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And because of that, I had some level of experience, but I still have recognition of, like, the minute you start opening up about content ideas, like, then you might hypothetically cut off the well of, the experience on the front line. So you have to do, even then, even at the point that I made the transition, you have to do what you have to do to basically stay in the craft so you can keep learning those lessons, kind of thing. So anywho, okay, crash course on the 8 SDR sessions. I have 600 seconds, less than 600 seconds. Okay, so the SDR topics were prospecting, how to make a great cold call, personalization at scale, how to build a sequence, how to handle objections, inbound, day in the life of top performing SDR, cold to email, and how to coach and train a lethal SDR team. Okay, let's start from the top. How to open a great cold call. The most important thing about a great cold call is structure. Oh, he restarted me. Thanks, man. Is structure. So I'd follow the structure on the one sheeter, but essentially hey, this is Beck calling, recorded line from Flip the Script. How have you been? They're like, good. I'm like, that's not non-emotional. I'm like, good, glad to hear that. The reason for my outreach is you hit them with personalization. I saw you wrote this article on LinkedIn. I saw that you made this comment the other day. I saw your About Me section on LinkedIn where you said, hiring comes down to finding people that are accountable to their outcomes and to their inputs because of those outcomes. So I was curious to know if you've come across the script before. You don't have to link it. And then they'll say yes or no. If they say yes, start to ask them questions. If they say no, take them into the prospect pack and say, got it. How about this? You give me the next 20 seconds to give you my best dog and pony show on who we are and why I thought we might be a good fit for you and your team over at blank. At the end of that 20 seconds, you can tell me whether you want to continue the conversation from there. Is that a deal? They will 95% of the time say yes. At that point, you go into a problem pitch where you're outlining problems according to specific metrics for their metrics that highlight unknowns. Not we work with people who struggle with low conversion rates. If they knew it already, they would, and it was a problem big enough based on what they knew, they would have come inbound. So the main thing about cold calls is learn that structure I would on the front end, but then on the back end, how good of questions are you asking? And I'm defining that on how many unknowns can you find within 1.5 minutes to 5 minutes. So they want to, continue that experience by taking a discovery call with you. Okay, second topic, personalization at scale. There's 6 buckets of personalization. The difference between personalization and relevance, no matter what any influencer says, because they can't read apparently. Relevance is one to many, personalization is one to one, hyper-personalization doesn't exist. It's not a term. Personalization is one to one. Personalization, when truly used, does work, period. The results are there. So you need to personalize to pattern interrupt. Now, I would pick, if you can, the number one type of personalization is problem personalization to the problem that they specifically have. But that's based on an overt indicator that hypothetically you can grab. In some cases, you can't. So in those cases, you pivot to the 6 buckets of personalization are self-authored content, which is content they've authored. So article, post, webinar. Second bucket is engaged content, stuff they engage with but didn't author themselves. Third bucket is self-identified traits, meaning things they wrote about themselves on LinkedIn, headline, bio line, company line. Fourth is junk drawer, meaning non-business related stuff about them. The fifth is background centric, which is stuff about their professional background, time between companies, their moves between companies, recommendations that they've given, recommendations they've received. And then the 6th is about their company. Hypothetically, it's not personalization because you could write it to everyone at the company. It's not a solid, it's not a liquid, it's a gel. Point being, those buckets ranked in that order is what will get you a hold of someone. Now you have to hook it. So how you do that is you think about kind of like Kirsten did. She's like, what's true about slalom? What's true about sales topics, and where's the overlay? And she's like, they have gates, getting around a gatekeeper is a topic. There's my tie. So that's how you can essentially tie it. You can personalize the scale. What I mean by scale is always results, but any more than 50 emails and you cook yourself on deliverability anyway. So, and you can easily get out 50 emails a day that are all personalized. So that's how I do it. I would personalize. I don't care what anyone who tells you not to personalize is someone who hasn't been in the chair, period. They haven't been an SDR. I was, it worked. It still works. It still works every single day because no one actually does it. So that's personalization at scale. Third topic, how to build a sequence. Sequences, you need to use every channel. I'd be intentional, base it on a trigger. There are 139 triggers, meaning people who downloaded content, people who attended a webinar, people who attended an event, etc. The first and fifth email are the ones that should mention that premise, but then I would transition with, but more importantly, and then focus on the personalization. I saw you attended this webinar, but more importantly, and then you go to the personalization. Every single email should be different in that it adds a unique piece of value. Every email should add a unique piece of value and a different piece of value than the email before it. Where you're going to see results is email 1 and 2 and 5. If you do it correctly, I would suggest doing a breakup email. And people make the joke online. They're like, what am I doing? Well, how can you break up with me? We're never dating me. I'm like, good, Brendan. I don't want to date you. I'm like, I'm not breaking up with you. I'm breaking up with the idea that I'm investing more time in you. If you're intentional about that and you add value in the midst of it, just want to check in to make sure I haven't overstepped my bounds. given you, and then you're on the personalization, given you wrote this article, and I noticed you attended our webinar originally. I thought it made sense to reach out. Maybe it's me, but I'm getting the feeling now it's not the best time. And I'm the annoying sales rep who can't take a hint. Of like, I'm gonna bug off now, but if I can ever be of any help in the meantime, just with my company or anything, I'm a click away. Or perhaps maybe we'll connect down the road. PS, and then add a piece of content. I thought you might like this article. Give them a gift on the way out. Blow their mind. Take care. Sign it. That will be your highest response rate for sure. So that's the breakup email. But sequences, I would think about call and email and social. But call and email, I would do more aggressively on the back end of the sequence as opposed to the front end of the sequence. And of course, I would use outreach to do it. They're the best in the game. They just are. And I would, heavily weight on the back end in terms of how quick the steps are together. So those are sequences. How to handle objections. You need to do a pattern interrupt and turn it around. I wouldn't use objection handles like, they're like, I'm running into a meeting, like, when's a better time to call? Or send me an email. And then you're like, what should I include in that email? I'm like, they don't care. They're just trying to get off the phone. I would pattern interrupt, can we hit the break? Can I level with you is one that I use a lot. I don't know, maybe it's me, but I get the feeling that I've been hearing send me an email a lot recently. I'm getting the feeling that's just your polite way of saying, go away, you annoying sales rep. I don't want to hear any more of your pitch. It was god awful, but you're trying to be nice to me. Did I get that right? They'll erupt from there. Add empathy when they're like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, I get it. My pitch probably is bad. And I did that to someone earlier on the phone. And, anyway, how about this? You give me the next 20 seconds to give me my best dog and pony show on who we are and why I thought we might be a good fit for you and your team for a blank. And at the end of that 20 seconds, you can tell me whether it makes sense to continue the conversation from there. Is that a deal? That's a shall objection counter. So it's your pattern interrupting and you're interrupting the objection. So you can exit that, and you're using a pattern interrupt plus elephant in the room, meaning in a non-accusatory way, saying exactly what you think is happening in the room. Okay. Inbound. Here's the topic. It's speed to lead. Good God, it is speed to lead. Speed to lead. 70% of buyers will go with the competitor, the vendor who gets back to them first. Under 5 minutes is the best SLA. Same day meetings is the best conversion rate. Any, second day, third day, fourth day, so on and so forth. After 5 days, you might as well kiss their butt goodbye. I would definitely set up a automatic. If you can, you need to set up go into the session that I go into inbound. I don't have time for it now, but with a la the clock. But I would definitely set it up on the website to where they can schedule a meeting, not with an SDR, with an account executive, with the rightly rooted account executive on the actual website. If you don't do that, and you turn to an SDR, and then what about the weekend? And what about, if they ping at 9 p.m., you're going to see hemorrhage pipeline. The best that I've seen is people convert 22.5% of demo requests into just first meetings. The lowest I've seen is 4%. The average I've seen is 9%. So inbound is speed to lead, and 35% are going to convert into close one, with only 6% for outbound. So it's an extremely important channel that I would pay attention to. Day in the life of top performing SDR, hit 35 emails at minimum a day, 60 calls alongside. Email is worth 2 calls if you want to translate those. Put any internal meetings on Monday. Monday, don't send any outreach. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., 5 minutes before the hour and after the hour. Increasingly throughout the day and throughout the week is when you're going to be your best hit time. So put all the internal meeting and any kind of coaching, blah, blah, blah on Monday. I wouldn't reach out on Monday, but you can craft the emails then. How to write an email that works. We're going to close with that. I have 20 seconds. Say something that matters. Worry about deliverability. Worry about pattern interrupt. Say things that people don't. You have to hook the subject line to the body. 4 to 5 lines max. Ask a question around it unknown so you can find value they didn't know. Oh! Use acronyms. Use odd punctuation. Don't mention your company name. Less links, the better. No more than 50 emails a day. No same subject lines. Be specific in the intro. Use a piece of personalization. Also double that as a subject line. You said blank. Reason for my outreach is I noticed on your LinkedIn, page that you said blank. And the second line is a question where you're asking a question around an unknown, but the first 3 or 4 words of that, you're linking that to conceptually the personalization to the relevance in terms of question. No more than 5 lines, absolute max. No 2 lines in the same paragraph. Yeah. Look at it as you have to pattern interrupt effectively along the way. No just following up, just circling back, just doubling to the top of your inbox. Happy Monday. Hope you and your kids are safe during these uncertain times. Any kind of that language that everyone use, you can't use. Otherwise, they'll log in and they'll know it's a sales rep and they'll log out. So yeah, that's cold email. Okay, let's go on to the AE topic. I'm sweating. And then we're going to do metal ceremonies and close out. I'm so sad. I want to extend it because I don't want. Okay, AE topics. Skeleton of great discovery call. Okay. Well, the topics are discovery call, status quo versus indecision, edge cases, staying alive to top performing AE, top discovery questions every AE should ask, part 1 and 2, and then what to coach on, and then deal reviews. Okay. Let's start with discovery. Skeleton of great discovery call. The thing to find a discovery call, the point of a discovery call is to find unknowns, period. That is the point of a discovery call. It's not to find out their pain and link it to your products. It's not to find out their current state and future state so you can justify your pricing and find the delta in between. That's all great for you, but they don't want you to be able to hold pricing. That doesn't add any value to them unless you find unknowns, which is the only point of discovery from their view. So misdiagnosis is things that they believe that aren't true. A misdiagnosis is something they've missed entirely. Either one of those, the more you find, the faster you find them, the more impacts that are linked to them, et cetera, the better off you are. So the point of discovery call should be after those. They should be anchored to their metrics. There are lagging indicators, leading indicators, and leading indicators. Lagging is after the game finishes. Leading is before the game starts. Leading is during the game as it progresses to predict whether they'll hit their lagging indicator and then diagnose which leading indicator to change. And once they've changed it, to look back to see if they've changed it enough and in the right way to hit their lagging indicators. So they're in slalom. The final lagging indicator is time. The leading indicator could be their skis. And the leading indicator could be their time around gate, speed around the gate, right? And then a business problem is attached to a lagging indicator, a tactical problem is attached to a leading indicator, and a root cause attached to a leading indicator. They're all different for their different respective roles. You do not solve 2 to 3 business problems as an organization. You solve 2 to 3 business problems per persona. That is a huge myth. Per persona, because what is a problem to them, the difference between a pain and a problem is the pain is a negative experience and a problem is anything you solve or solve for. So the difference between those two is what things are they going to solve based on their persona, based on their metrics. So everything is always anchored to their metrics. The more of those you find, the better off you are. It lowers their fear and it also increases your credibility. And it also increases the value of the conversation, which is what we're there to begin with for. Status quo versus indecision. Status quo is they don't think the problem's big enough. Indecision is they do, but they still don't close. The 3 most common techniques to use that are all terrible statistically is discounting, ROI selling. So if you're putting together an ROI use case, for instance, on time saved or money saved, which are the 2 you're in benefitsville. It means you're agnostic of a problem. Problem should be around their metrics. Like for instance, when I was in the car yesterday, after 10 minutes, I was thinking of this when I was in the car. After 10 minutes on the highway, sitting there, that's a pain. But I didn't do something about it because it wasn't egregious enough. And it wasn't preventing me from doing anything. It doesn't matter if something's costly. It doesn't matter if something takes a lot of time. If it's not preventing them from doing something else. Let me see if anyone can guess the point at which I decided to jump out of the line and find out random Italian highways to get around it. I want to see if anyone can guess the point at which that happened, where it turned in from a pain to a problem. I'm sitting on the highway And it was around from the numbers perspective, it was around an hour and a half of how long I was on that highway before I jumped out of line to do something about it. I want to see if anyone can guess why I decided to jump out of that line. What changed for me? What was the thing in my head that made me say, okay, now is when I need to do something about it? Point being, COI selling. I'm going to give y'all a couple seconds in the chat because I know there's a little bit of delay. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone give it up for Kirsten. Everyone, for real, give it up for Kirsten. I was going to be late to closing ceremonies. Was it pain? Yeah, but not enough until my marker in my clock said, you're going to be there at 8:32. And I was like, I'm going to be late. So it went from a pain into, I'm going to do something about this, because it was okay. If I'd stayed on that highway and died there, fine. But I wasn't going to be late to closing ceremonies, because it's once in a lifetime. I couldn't, get it back. Then I was going to miss all the athletes. So Kirsten, to her brilliant point, I want everyone to give it up for Kirsten. The point at which I did something about it is because I couldn't do something else in this if it remained as is. For that first hour and 29 minutes, I could still make it on time if I stayed as is. Was it still a waste of time? Yeah, of course. But I didn't change anything. Why? It was risky. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, what happens if this frees up? But at that point, I was like, it doesn't matter if it frees up. I'm still going to be late. So I jumped out of line and went down all these windy roads. I was like, oh, this is the way. Went all the way down that path, and then there was a blockade. I was like, I can't get through this. Can't get through it. So I turn around, find another way and route around and go around and find my way there. And I got there with 30 seconds to spare. I kid you not. So to Kirsten's point, that is how buyers think. It doesn't matter about pain. It matters about when I can't do something else. So indecision, they do think the problem's big enough, but they still don't do something about it anyway. Why? Because of fear that it won't work. Here's the thing. I was paralyzed in indecision, I'd say from hour and 15 to 30, because I saw that upcoming brink that I'm going to be late around this, but I still didn't move. Why? Because I was afraid that I would make a move and then it would make it worse or it wouldn't work. And what would have worked is if I stayed still. That is your buyer's fear. That's your buyer's fear. And to be fair, I was correct. The first path that I pursued, it was blockaded. It's not on Google Maps. Thanks, Italy. It's not on Google Maps. But I was like, I have to find another decision, because why? I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I'm going to be late if I stay on this highway. So I might as well roll the dice. I'm going to run into the impact. But that fear, like a minute, hour and 15, of course I was afraid. I see the clock ticking, 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 ticking. That is indecision. It's not that the problem wasn't big enough. The problem was for sure big enough still at hour and 15. So the one thing I wouldn't do is COI selling. COI selling is cost of inaction selling, where you're like, okay, imagine if you had been the annoying rep in that car and you're like, what's going to happen to you, Beck, if you stay still? I would have wanted you dead. I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I know. I'm going to miss closing ceremonies. You don't need to get me to say that out loud. And it's not helpful if you say that out loud. What's helpful is if you found a route around it. And what's helpful is if you'd ask me questions so that you had the credibility to do that. If you had found an unknown for me, hey, you can do the blah, 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 I would have made you king of the universe. I'd have given you every last cent that I had. If you had been like, what's the impact to you, Beck, if you miss closing ceremony? I truly would have wanted you dead. That is COI selling. And that is why it doesn't work. It's antagonizing your buyer, trying to make them rev up and want to solve the problem more. I already wanted to solve the problem. I already did. So you're broadcasting to them that you don't get that you are delighted with their pain. You're so excited. Why? Because you sell a solution, hypothetically, but that your target for sure in the conversation is not to help them. That is not a seller I will work with. That's not a seller I will even answer the questions. So the point is no COI selling. That is your buyer's mindset and status quo and indecision. Selling to a committee, you have to find an unknown for each one of them. Competitive selling, you need to make it about discovery and them, not the competitor. Ghosting, send them a piece of value to unghost them. Top questions. We got 15 seconds. Ask some questions to find unknowns to help them. That's what selling is all about. I mean, that's the punchline. I had 600 seconds. That's what it boils down to. Ask some questions to find unknowns for them to help them solve the problem either way. That's it. Everyone give it up for Kirsten. I mean, that is a great case. What is right? Of like, let's say someone was like, when I jump out of line, they're like, you're headed left. Like, what's the map that you're planning on taking to Verona? I was like, well, I'm going to go left, and then I'm going to go right, and I'm going to blah, 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 blah. Did you know there's a closure over here? I would have been like, here's some cash, right? I was panicked. And I just think of these sellers being like, what's the impact to you if, oh my God, I'd have been like, move or don't and stay on the highway and I will run you over. And I won't even cry. I won't even cry. Then I'm like, I know the impact. I know the impact. And you're not helping me, getting me to say it out loud. And it's not even helping you to get me to buy, because I was panicked. I would have given anything in that moment of like, I need to make it to this closing ceremony, and like, here's the other thing. I'm like, if I had spent 30 seconds in any direction, no matter how you slice it, I would not have made it. Why? Because that entire long trail of people coming in, like there was cameras all, over at the top. So literally they were like, stop broadcast. And I am sprinting through that they're like, cut the transmission. And I can hear them saying it, they're like, cut the transmission because I was sprinting through. So I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, you're going to put me on, in the openings here on the way out and the way in. So no matter how you slice it, 30 seconds mattered to me. Why? Because I couldn't do the thing that I needed to do. That's when it becomes something your buyer's going to do about. Have I sat in traffic before? Yes. Is it annoying? Yes. Do I have rage problems? Of course. Look at me. It's baked in the box. I was mad from 2 minutes in. I was mad. But enough to do something about it was dependent on what it cost me. And the thing that it was costing me was closing ceremony. You have to keep in mind those first 40 minutes that I'm like, I like to be there ahead of time. I like to walk and just take my time and blah, blah. That's what I like to do. So it was costing me that already, but the price tag got so high, and how that raise was not someone asking me what I believed already the cost of an action was. Hypothetically, if they had found something new, so value to me in that moment would have been, to Robert's point, to Kirsten's, but find an unknown for me, and your buyer will be incredibly grateful. The person who sold me the toll tag, the person who sold me the snow tires, I'm incredibly grateful, even though I paid more money for it, because it was around an unknown that I didn't have. So saying, do you have budget for this thing that you have, that you need, that you don't even know that you need, because you don't even know the problem that you have, it's crazy. So I'd find the unknown. That is the punchline. Okay. Last topic, very last topic. It's going to take like 2 seconds. Is number one important thing that you can do to be successful: learn about your buyer. That's it. Learn about your buyer. Learn, like, your buyer's trying to drive somewhere. Learn about all of the roads. Learn about all of the highways. Learn about the traffic jams. Learn about, like, there was a point where a cop car went in front of me. I almost tailed him. I was like, I'd rather go into oncoming traffic right now behind this cop car than be late to closing ceremonies. Learn for the buyer so the buyer doesn't have to, so they can lean into your expertise. That is the number one thing to be successful. Okay, let's go into closing ceremonies. I'm sorry, Jay Frank, Robert, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to, number one gold medal, I'm going to have to put Kirsten up there. By the way, men gave all of y'all nicknames. This is a conversation we had beforehand. But I think he called Kirsten, I think he called you the Georgia Peach. I'm not really sure, but he's not going to come online and fight me about it right now. So, point being, number one gold medal is to Kirsten. Robert, Jay Frank, I'm sorry. She just nailed it on that. Yeah, I couldn't be there and I couldn't be late. So that is my number one gold medal. Gold medal number two. Gold medalist number two. I like how everyone gets a gold medal, all equal gold medals. So my second gold medal is to Mr. Jay Frank. So my family now knows about you. Jay Frank, you do get a gold medal, just like the medal he's has in his hand right now. Min is so thoughtful, even with his comments of Los Angeles, California, coming in from Los Angeles, California at 6'2". I'm not going to say weight, but point being, so Jay Frank, you are the second gold medalist. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for honestly, I hope I didn't pressure you into it, because I was like, Jay Frank, if you're not there, I don't know if I can do the cold Olympics. I don't know if I can do it. Okay, third. That's such a high quality response. Why would I hate you? Oh my gosh, Kirsten, that was so spot on. Because I was thinking about it while I'm in the car. I'm like, this is going to be a lesson. Because I was thinking about it intrinsically, even though I was in absolute hell. I'm thinking of how I'm thinking as a buyer, that I'm like, it's not bad enough. It's not bad enough. It's not bad enough. It's not bad enough. And then it's in a range where it is bad enough, but I was like, but if I jump out of line, I could see all the little windy paths that go around it. I'm like, but what happens if one of them are closed? What happens if some of these are one way? What happens if da-da-da? And I was right. Some of them were closed and some of them were one way. And I was thinking about my mindset, and it's like, it doesn't matter how much time is too much time. It's like any time is too much time in traffic. I took a video, which I'm going to show y'all so you don't think I'm completely full of it. Have y'all seen The Office? The movie, Office Space. Office Space. So there's this scene in Office Space where a guy's sitting in traffic, and literally there's this old gentleman who's on his walker, who's walking past him. And here we are. This guy reminds me of the guy in Office Space. Where they're stuck in traffic and the guy with the walker is going faster. I'm gonna be late to closing ceremonies because of this shit. Sorry. So this is at 4:53, and I hadn't done something about it. I'm like, I'm going to be late to closing ceremonies because of this crap. Sorry. I was sending it to my family. Sorry, that doesn't make it better. I shouldn't be swearing in front of my family, but I was sending it to my family. So point being, Kirsten, I had to give it to you. Of it's so important what you said. Okay, third medal, Mr. Robert Reuter, Spokane, Washington. How does Min know all of your locate? Oh, because the medals. He mails you the medals. That's what it is. Mr. Robert, Mr. Robert, thank you for you three have really, just from day one, and you make this such you have not only made the series really fun for me, you make it to where I'm like, I have to get to the live stream because you three have been so involved. So thank you very much, Mr. I don't know why I want to call you Mr. Robert. Maybe it's because of Mr. Rogers, but you are gold medal number 3. Gold medal number 4, Tuning in all the way from Pueblito, Mexico, Federico Garcia Alvarez. You are gold medal number 4. Thank you for tuning in. Here's the fun thing. Min actually made a list there was actually qualifications for this, and he made a list on tune-in time and comment ratio. So these are very, very stringent qualifications in terms of the gold medal. So Federico, thank you for tuning in. And then, of course, may we, number 5, numéro 5, Jean-Francois, you are number 5. By the way, you have a lovely, lovely Winter Olympics team. The Canadians were very nice on the bus. I actually want to look up you need to tell me, I thought of you in this moment. You need to tell me who these guys are. I'm going to show you. Hold on, stand by. Who this guy is. You need to find him, what Olympian he is. I don't know what event he was in. So I have several pictures of the Canadians. Okay, so here's some more Canadians. You can see. So I want you to take these pictures and I want you to find out who I was talking to. Here's some more Canadians. And then this is all of them from the back. There's Team Netherlands. That's France in the middle. That's, I don't know what was on the left-hand side. And then there's Team Ukraine. So I want you to find out Jean-Francois, who I was talking to. Thank you for tuning in, even though I didn't get to speak French. Thank you for tuning in. You are numero 5 gold medalist. Okay, number 6, we've got Mr. Marco Forbato. So, mi dispiace for my Italian. I know that it's apparently really bad because I tried to speak Italian last night, but I am grazie mille for coming to each one of the episodes, for being a part of everything, even though you were probably, Marco, I never even asked you, were you at some of these events? Did you come to any of the events? Were you at any of the Olympics? So anywho, thank you very much for tuning in. You are our next gold medalist. Next gold medalist is going to be Mrs. Ruth Hernandez, coming all the way from Chicago, Italy. Ruth Hernandez, thank you very much for being a part of the games. And then we have one more. No, we have 2 more, of course. Okay. Second to last gold medalist is Gianluca. No, Min, you missed. Sorry, y'all. Gianluca. Ambietti. Grazie mille. See, listen to that R. I don't know how they can understand me, for tuning in to the Winter Outreach, Cold Outreach Olympics. And then our last one is going to be Nauman is Mr. Marwain. Thank you very much for tuning in from Morocco. I see here's something that you do that I constantly see. After I jump off the live stream, I always see that you say hello back and that you tag me. So thank you all to everyone. And then I have to give one extra gold medal, which Min did not see coming, but the extra gold medal is I want everyone, please, please, please give it up for Mr. Min Mather. Min has been behind the scenes doing unbelievable amounts of work on time schedules and time shifts, and now you need to go live on this topic, and on and on and on. And I go back to the chat live from Beck's basement where I throw food down there. What's really cool to me is when I log off the live stream and then go to the comments, and Min is constantly in there. And so I have to give it up. I have to give credit where credit's due. Min has been with me for a very long time. I feel like since the beginning of time. And y'all, he is just incredible to work with. He's extremely detailed. He's constantly coming up with new ideas. He had nicknames for each one of you planned. And I said, Min, you can either come on this show live and you can announce them, or I'm going to announce them by their normal actual names. So this series would certainly not be put on without men. So I have to give 16 gold medals to men. I said, called them the other day and I said, if anyone wanted to know a list of my shortcomings or how emotionally fragile I am, go no further than Min Mather, because he has been with me through thick and through thin, certainly in this series, and making everything happen on such a dime turn. And I want everyone to give it up for him on that intro video. I truly took that intro video because I told him, I said, hey, I want for the Winter Olympics, we're going to do this. It needs to feel completely different. It needs to still hold a line, but feel completely different than the Summer Olympics. And I honestly, I watched that intro video, I think 6 or 7 times. I sent it to my parents. They're like, looks, they're like, it looks like you're better than the Olympics. We so much so to where a couple of our videos on ShmooTube, they were like, they thought that we were an infringement for the like actual Olympics. So I have to give it up for Min Mather. And then the last one I have to give it up for is thank you to, of course, my wonderful partners at Outreach. Outreach has meant an incredible amount to me since the beginning. So true story, their former CEO, Manny Medina, he is the reason why I started Flip the Script. He talked me through Flip the Script on a weekend, and they have been a partner with me since day -200. Even someone, Scott Barker, who was at Outreach at the time, he essentially made me LLC Flip the Scripts. And the team has been so incredible to work with every single time, and certainly within this Olympics. Something that Outreach, well, I'm going to say 2 things, and then I promise I will stop gabbing. The first thing is Outreach is the best in market. They just are. Y'all know me. I don't even back any products. I have never made a paid post. Why? Because it's not necessarily about the products. It's about what you can use them to do, when, where, and why. Outreach is the best. They always have been. They're always, consistently coming out with new product updates. And I mean this, of like even small things of blocking you from sending a dynamic tag if there's an exclamation point. Why? Because it causes a problem. People will send out insert personalization here, but just down to the small features and up to the bigger picture items of, releasing Kaya for tuning into AE conversations. They're just always the best in market. They're always the best in terms of they're never making moves that are like, ooh, they're always high class, high integrity, focusing on you. But the other thing is, just as a partner, they have been incredible to work with from day one. Becky, Haley, Jeremy, my poor Jeremy Moskowitz, you know who you are. Chris, I mean, they've just been an incredible team to work with from the marketing perspective. And something they do for me as a partner, which is really indispensable to me, is they never, just so y'all know, they never are like, you have to say this, you have to do this. I come to them with ideas and I'm like, hey, what if we did the cold outreach Olympic? And they're like, we love it. So just as a content creator, it's so much fun for them to, enable me and to let me really run with ideas and not tell me you have to say this or you have to do this or blah, blah, blah. I mean, they just were so creative in terms of the series, so helpful, so supportive. And of course, thank you for sending me here. So that is everything. Thank you so much, everybody, for everything. For real. I mean it. I had so much fun. I'm getting very emotional right now. So I'm like going to cut the live stream, but thank you so much for tuning in. Kirsten, Jay Frank, everyone, Robert, Jean-Francois, Marco, everyone who is involved, Min. Thank you to Outreach. Thank you to, of course, the Olympics. And thank you to the country of Italy. I'm going to be tuning out now, and I'm going to be going back to Paris. So I do miss my Frenchies when I saw them on the bus last night. So if for your gold medal, Min put up the email earlier. So for your gold medal, if you would reach out to him in terms of we need your addresses so we can send you your gold. Hopefully these gold medals won't break like the Olympics ones. There's like 150 of them that broke. So hopefully ours won't break. Speaking of breaking, this is breaking my heart. Thank you so much to everyone for tuning in, for being a part of this, for making it so meaningful and to making it so much fun. I really had a lot of fun. It was an incredible experience. Yeah, I was thinking about, I was like, I have to leave Italy tomorrow. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel almost Italian at this point. So thank you everyone for making it so much fun and so meaningful and for tuning in the entire time. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Robert. Such a weird experience, right? Anti-quote. I said, ma'am, I'm not in the Winter Olympics. I'm not in any Olympics. I'll never be in any Olympics except for the sales Olympics and the cold outreach Olympics. So, anywho, grazie mille to everyone, a tutti, and I will see you all soon. Ciao for now.